My girlfriend said she needed space. Weeks later, she came back begging, but she wasn't the same person. Neither was I. It started on an ordinary morning, the kind that should have faded into the background of memory. I was standing at the counter making coffee, letting the smell drift through the kitchen when she came in. Her arms were folded across her chest, not in that playful way she used to hug herself against the chill, but tight, defensive, like she was holding something back. She leaned against the counter opposite me. I noticed she hadn't made eye contact yet, and that was the first alarm bell. Quiet, but there. Then she said it. "I think I need some space." The words landed flat, like a dropped plate that doesn't shatter, but still makes your stomach drop. At first, I thought I'd misheard her. We hadn't been fighting. We hadn't had some blowout argument the night before. Just silence. Her scrolling on her phone while I watched TV. Nothing that screamed end of the world. "Space?" I repeated, more to myself than to her. She nodded, arms still tight across her chest. "Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm losing myself in all this. I just need to figure out who I am again." It wasn't the words themselves that stung the most. It was the way she said them. Calm, practiced, almost like she'd rehearsed them on the drive home from work, maybe in the bathroom mirror. No cracks in her voice, no hesitation, just a firm decision wrapped in soft language. I stood there, the coffee machine still hissing, and felt my chest go hollow. Part of me wanted to demand an explanation, to ask if there was someone else, if I'd failed her somehow. But another part of me, the quieter part, just watched her. Observed the way she couldn't hold my gaze, how she shifted her weight like she was already halfway out the door. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a request. This was a declaration. She wasn't asking for space. She was telling me she had already taken it in her mind. And in that moment, without raising my voice, without begging, without even spilling the coffee I'd just poured, I understood something important. Whatever journey she was about to take, it wasn't going to be about us. It was going to be about her. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for me to start thinking about myself too. Most men in my shoes probably would have argued, maybe begged, maybe even panicked, throwing promises into the air like confetti, hoping one would land and stick. But that wasn't me. I've never believed in forcing someone to stay where they didn't want to be. If you have to beg a partner not to walk away, then they were already halfway gone before the conversation even started. So, instead of blowing up, I just nodded. I took a sip of my coffee, tasted nothing, and said, "All right, if that's what you need, take it." Her eyes flickered. For a split second, she looked surprised, almost disappointed that I hadn't fought her on it. I think she expected tears, shouting, some kind of scene she could point to later as proof that I was the problem. But I didn't give her that. I stayed calm. My voice was even, my breathing steady. Inside, sure, there was a knot forming, a weight pressing on my chest. But I held it in. Not because I wanted to prove something to her, but because I'd already learned long ago. When someone shows you who they are, you don't argue with them. You just believe it. She opened her mouth like she wanted to justify herself, to soften the blow with explanations, but no words came out. Eventually, she just sighed, turned, and walked down the hallway toward the bedroom. I listened to the sound of drawers sliding open, the quiet thump of her suitcase being pulled from the closet. That was it. Years of shared mornings, quiet routines, and easy laughter, boiled down to a single phrase: I need space. I didn't follow her. I didn't ask for details. I just stood in the kitchen, drinking my coffee in silence, letting the realization settle in. If she wanted to leave, I wasn't going to stand in her way. And in a strange, heavy way, that calm acceptance felt like my first act of strength in a relationship where I'd been giving too much for too long. She went to the bedroom, and I didn't follow right away. I stayed in the kitchen long enough for the coffee to go cold, long enough to hear the small sounds that turn a decision into reality. The closet door rolling along its track, the heavy zipper of her suitcase, the soft thud of drawers closing a little too firmly. By the time I walked down the hall, the room looked like a quiet crime scene. Things weren't broken, just removed. She was efficient, the way people are when they've already had this argument in their head. T-shirts folded in thirds, jeans rolled tight, the travel toiletry bag she kept under the sink snapped open and filled with muscle memory. I noticed what she chose and what she didn't. Essentials first: chargers, makeup, the worn sweatshirt she'd stolen from me years ago and claimed as her own, the one that smelled faintly like detergent in winter. Then came the items that didn't belong to a quick cool-down stay at a friend's place. Her favorite hardcover with notes in the margins, the small framed photo from the Oregon coast, a pair of dress heels she hadn't worn in months. Space, she'd called it. But people who plan to orbit back don't pack keepsakes. I stood in the doorway and let her work. I didn't offer to help, and I didn't try to stop her. The bedspread rippled with the wake of every movement. Shirt, jeans, another shirt, the methodical sweep of a hand smoothing fabric, like it could iron out whatever she thought she'd lost. When she caught my reflection in the mirror, her hands hesitated for a heartbeat, then went right back to folding. The room had its own quiet narrative if you knew where to look. On her nightstand, the little ceramic dish where she kept rings and hair ties was half empty. She'd taken the 2 pieces she wore on good days. The plant on the dresser had a fresh watering line in the soil. She was leaving, but she didn't want anything to die while she was gone. That told me more than any speech. She wanted a version of this life to keep breathing in her absence, just in case she came back to check its pulse. I pulled open the top drawer of the dresser we shared and took inventory of the space she left behind. Bare wood where stacks of shirts used to be. A lone concert ticket stub stuck to the corner like it had been forgotten by accident or spared on purpose. The weight in my chest wasn't anger, it was recognition. Whatever we were had been thinning for a while. We just avoided measuring it. Now it was measurable. Now it could fit in a suitcase. She zipped the bag closed and stood it upright. The wheels clicked once against the hardwood. She reached for the handle, then for the small canvas tote she used for quick errands, and slipped her passport into the inside pocket. Habit, maybe, or a tell. We weren't planning a trip. She was planning possibilities. I cleared a spot on the dresser and set her spare set of keys there. I didn't want them on my ring anymore. Not in resentment, just clarity. She glanced at the keys, then at me, and I watched a flicker of something pass through her face. Not remorse, not triumph, just the unease of realizing the choices are two-way streets. There's a ceremony to leaving, even when nobody admits it. She took one last look around, like she was checking a hotel room for lost chargers. Her eyes slid over the bed, the framed photos, the dent in the pillow where her head had slept last night. She wasn't memorizing any of it, she was inventorying. I carried nothing for her, not out of spite, but out of respect for the truth of her decision. At the front door, she set the suitcase upright again and pressed her fingers against the telescoping handle, the way people do when they brace for weight. For a second, she looked like she might say something reassuring, something to soften the edges. "It's only a few weeks, I just need to clear my head," one of those lines you send ahead like sandbags. Instead, she nodded once, almost formal, and pulled the door open. When it clicked shut, I stood in the entryway staring at the spot where the suitcase had been. The quiet came in fast, the kind that has a tone to it, like the low hum you only notice when a refrigerator powers down. In the bedroom, a drawer I hadn't pushed all the way closed slid forward the rest of the inch on its own. The place felt bigger and smaller at the same time. I walked back to the bedroom and made the bed. Not because I thought it would fix anything, but because routines keep you from reaching for the wrong things when your hands don't know where to go. I smoothed the corners, tucked the sheet, folded the blanket, and stood there with everything neat and empty. Her side looked like a hotel room now. Mine looked the same as it always had. That contrast said enough. On her pillow, a single long strand of hair caught the light. I picked it up and dropped it in the trash. It felt less like erasing her and more like claiming the square footage of my own life again. By noon, the apartment had a new layout. Not furniture, just the energy of the rooms. The bathroom shelf had space where her bottles had been. The closet bar bowed a little less under the weight. The shoe rack looked organized for the first time in years. Nothing dramatic, nothing tragic, just matter-of-fact proof that a person can subtract themselves with a zipper and a straight face. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled past. Someone laughed on the sidewalk. The world kept the same pace it had before breakfast. Inside, I poured the cold coffee down the sink and washed the cup until it squeaked in my hand. I set it upside down on the rack and watched the last drops run toward the drain. She'd said she needed space. Standing there in the kitchen with quiet filling the corners, I realized she'd given me some too. I didn't know it yet, but I was going to use it better than she did. The door had barely clicked shut before the silence began to settle. It wasn't the peaceful kind, the type you get when you're finally alone after a long day. This was different, heavy, uneven. It pressed into the corners of the house like fog creeping into a valley. That first night, I didn't even turn on the TV. I sat on the couch in the dim glow of the lamp, listening to the refrigerator hum and the occasional car outside. Every sound felt louder because of what was missing. Her laugh from the other room, the shuffle of her slippers down the hallway, the faint buzz of her phone notifications that used to drive me crazy. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel the same. It was like she'd vacuumed herself out of the air, leaving behind outlines of where she used to exist. The empty spot on the bathroom counter where her makeup bag usually sat. The closet suddenly breathing easier without her clothes crowding mine. The kitchen sink with just one plate in it, mine. I walked from room to room that night, not out of restlessness, but out of disbelief. It's one thing to watch someone pack a bag, it's another to witness the echo of their absence. She'd said space, but I knew what it really was. Distance, separation, a door closing so softly it almost sounded polite. I climbed into bed and stared at the ceiling. Her side of the bed stretched out, cool and untouched, the sheets already forgetting her warmth. I thought maybe I'd toss and turn, but the truth was, I slept harder than I had in weeks. That told me something too. The next morning, the silence greeted me again, but it wasn't as sharp. It was steady, predictable. I made coffee for one, set down one mug instead of two, and realized routines could be rewritten. Slowly, quietly. By the third day, I found myself getting used to the absence. Not comfortable with it, but no longer startled by it. I noticed how much more time I had when I wasn't waiting on someone's mood, someone's whims. The house was emptier, sure, but it was also simpler. And in that silence, I began to understand that maybe she thought she'd left me with loneliness, but what she'd really left me with was clarity. The first weekend without her, my phone lit up more than usual. Friends, my sister, even a couple of old coworkers I hadn't grabbed beers with in months suddenly wanted to check in. Word travels fast when someone packs a bag. They all asked in different ways, but it boiled down to the same question. How are you holding up? I could hear it in their voices. They expected cracks. They expected me to sound like a man unraveling, pacing empty rooms, staring at his phone, waiting for a message that wasn't coming. Maybe if this had happened years ago, they would have been right. But not now. I told them the truth. I'm fine. It wasn't bravado. I wasn't pretending. I wasn't trying to play tough. I really was fine. I didn't feel like I'd been abandoned. I felt like a weight had been lifted, a weight I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. John, my oldest friend, squinted at me across his porch when I said it. Man, you don't got a front. She just left. That's supposed to mess you up. I shrugged, sipping the beer he'd handed me. She asked for space. I gave it to her. If she doesn't know whether she wants to be here, why should I tear myself apart over it? He studied me like he was waiting for my face to crack. When it didn't, he leaned back in his chair and shook his head. You're handling this better than I would. My sister Sarah was the same way. She called late one night, her voice soft. You're not alone in the house, are you? Do you want me to come by? I laughed gently. Sarah, I'm not sitting here in the dark crying into an ice cream tub. I'm fine. She paused. You sound fine. Because I am. The truth was, everyone expected me to break because they couldn't imagine reacting any other way. But I'd already decided. Begging wasn't in my nature, and neither was falling apart for someone who had one foot out the door. If she came back, it would be on her terms. But if she didn't, well, I was starting to realize that life wasn't as empty as everyone assumed it would be. Once the initial check-ins died down, I realized nobody was going to live this stretch for me. Friends had their own families, their own lives. My sister couldn't hover forever. The silence was mine to face, and I had to decide what to do with it. So, I filled it. At 6 in the morning, before the sun even broke over the rooftops, I laced up my shoes and went back to the gym. It had been years since I'd walked through those doors with any consistency. Life, routine, and comfort had pushed it aside. But now, when my alarm went off, I didn't hit snooze. I didn't have anyone to tiptoe around, no one still asleep in the bed. It was just me and the choice to either wallow or move. The first week back under the weights was rough. My body complained, lungs burning, muscles tight. But that pain felt honest, in a way my relationship hadn't in months. Every drop of sweat was proof of effort, proof of forward motion. And unlike her vague, I need space, this pain had a purpose. Work filled the rest of my hours. I stopped rushing home like I used to, stopped worrying about who was waiting for me or what kind of mood I'd find. I stayed late, cleared projects that had been dragging, even volunteered for the jobs no one wanted. My boss noticed, my coworkers noticed, but more importantly, I noticed. The days began to stack differently. Instead of measuring them by her texts, her calls, her moods, I measured them in miles run, in sets completed, in tasks knocked off my list. There was no emptiness in that, just progress. Evenings were quieter, sure, but I found a rhythm. Meal prepping instead of grabbing takeout, reading books I'd let collect dust on the shelf. Even taking a long drive out past the city limits with the windows down, just to feel the air on my face. I wasn't filling the silence to drown her out. I was filling it because it was mine now. Mine to shape, mine to strengthen, mine to grow into. And little by little, I realized something I hadn't expected. I wasn't waiting for her to come back. Days slipped into weeks, and the silence between us stretched longer than I ever thought it would. Not a text, not a call, not even a half-hearted check-in to see if I was doing okay. At first, I caught myself glancing at my phone out of habit, expecting the screen to light up with her name. But it never did. By the end of that first week, I stopped checking. By the end of the second, I stopped caring. Her absence spoke louder than any explanation could have. If she truly just needed space, wouldn't she have at least reached out to bridge the distance? If she was really trying to find herself, wouldn't she have let me know she still saw a future here? But the longer the silence lasted, the clearer it became. She wasn't on a journey of self-discovery. She was on a trial run of life without me. And the trial was going smoothly enough that she didn't bother to look back. That realization should have broken me. Years ago, it would have. But instead, I felt something different. Confirmation. Her silence wasn't a wound. It was evidence. Evidence that I had been right not to beg, right not to chase. Evidence that if she could vanish so cleanly, then maybe I wasn't the one being left behind. Maybe she was. The house had adjusted too. The rooms no longer felt haunted by her absence. They just felt mine. My routines were solid now. Early mornings, long days, quiet nights. I wasn't pretending to be fine. I was fine. Some nights, though, when I sat on the porch with a drink in my hand, I thought about what her silence really meant. It wasn't just about space. It was about choices. Every unanswered day was a choice she made. And choices have consequences. The truth has a way of leaking through the cracks, even when someone tries to seal them shut. Hers did. It started small, offhand comments from mutual friends. One night at the bar, a buddy of mine who didn't know the whole story let something slip. "Hey, saw Rachel downtown the other night. She looked like she was having fun." He said it casually, like it was nothing. But the look in his eyes told me it wasn't the kind of fun you'd expect from someone on a soul-searching retreat. I didn't press him. I just nodded and sipped my beer. But inside, I felt the pieces sliding into place. Then came social media, that unfiltered truth-teller. She hadn't posted anything herself, but friends of friends had tagged her in photos. A blurry club shot with her arm draped over a stranger's shoulder. A patio picture where she leaned in a little too close to a guy I didn't recognize. Each image had the same hollow look in her eyes, the kind of smile that comes easier when you're pretending you've moved on. I didn't need confirmation, but it arrived anyway. A mutual friend, someone too blunt to play games, finally said what everyone else was circling around. "Look, man, I don't know what's going on between you two, but Rachel's not just finding herself. She's out there with other guys." The words landed without drama. No thunderbolt, no knife twist. Just a steady acknowledgement of what I'd already known deep down. She hadn't taken space to breathe. She'd taken space to sample other lives, other men, other versions of herself that didn't include me. And as much as the truth stung, it also freed me. It cut the last thread of doubt. Because now I knew I hadn't lost her. She'd thrown herself away. It was almost 2 months to the day when she showed up again. I was in the middle of a Saturday morning routine, coffee brewing, gym bag by the door, a quiet playlist humming through the speakers, when a knock echoed through the house. Not the casual rhythm of a delivery driver, not the neighbor asking for a favor. This was heavier, deliberate. When I opened the door, there she was, Rachel. Same duffel bag slung over her shoulder, same face I used to wake up next to, but different somehow. Tired around the eyes, makeup a little smudged, a forced smile that didn't reach anywhere real. "Hey," she said, softly, like the last 8 weeks had been nothing more than a pause button. I leaned against the frame, arms crossed. "Hey." For a moment we just stood there, the silence filled with everything unsaid. She looked past me into the house, like she expected to see things waiting just as she left them. My heart, my trust, my patience, boxed up neatly, untouched, ready for her to slide back into. But that house wasn't the same. Neither was I. Thinking, she started, her voice faltering. I needed the time, but now I realize what I really want. She swallowed hard, like the words themselves burned coming up. I want us. I want you." I didn't answer right away. I studied her instead. The nervous shifting of her feet, the way her eyes flickered as if she was rehearsing lines she'd practiced on the drive over. And beneath it all, I saw it. The desperation. The kind that doesn't come from love, but from fear. Fear of losing something steady after chasing things that weren't. She adjusted the strap of her bag, voice trembling now. "Can we talk, please?" For the first time since she left, I felt the balance shift. She was the one standing on the outside, waiting to be let in. And I was the one holding the door. She didn't wait for an invitation. The words started spilling the second she realized I wasn't rushing to welcome her back. "Look, I know I hurt you," she said quickly, her voice breaking in practiced fragments. "I know I made a mistake. I thought I needed freedom. I thought I needed to find myself, but all I found was emptiness. I was stupid. I see that now." Her hands trembled as she set the duffel bag down at her feet like an offering. She took a step closer, searching my face for cracks, for anything that would tell her she still belonged to her. "You're the only one who's ever really been there for me," she continued, desperation sharpening her tone. "The late nights, the bills, the little things, no one else cared the way you did. I got caught up trying to prove something to myself, but I don't want that anymore. I just want you. I want us." She reached out like she might touch my arm, then thought better of it and let her hand fall. Tears traced the edges of her makeup, and she didn't even wipe them away. She wanted me to see them. She wanted me to believe them. "I can do better," she whispered, her voice hoarse now. "I'll do anything. Just, please, don't give up on us. Don't give up on me." I let her words hang in the air, let the weight of them sit where they belonged. A few months earlier, I might have folded under that performance, because that's what it was, a performance. But now I saw the gaps between her sentences, the pieces she wasn't saying. The nights she spent with other men weren't mentioned. The silence she left me in for weeks wasn't acknowledged. She framed her absence as if it had been some harmless mistake, a misguided sabbatical, instead of what it really was, a choice. Her voice cracked again. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you, give me another chance." And in that moment, standing at the doorway, I realized she was right about one thing. She didn't deserve it. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, I saw the girl I once thought I'd build a life with. But that version of her was gone, replaced by someone who had tested the waters of other men and only came back when she realized they couldn't hold her up. I shook my head slowly. "No, Rachel." Her lips parted like she hadn't heard me right. "What? I'm not doing this," I said, my voice even. "You wanted space. You took it. You filled it with whoever and whatever you thought you needed. And now you're standing here, not because you love me, but because it didn't work out the way you imagined." She blinked fast, the tears coming harder now. "That's not true." "It is," I cut in, not harshly, but firmly. "If I was what you really wanted, you wouldn't have walked out the door in the first place. And you sure as hell wouldn't have spent your break with other men." Her shoulders collapsed. The duffel bag slumped to the floor as if it understood better than she did. "I made a mistake," she whispered again, her voice cracking. "No," I said. "You made a choice. And so am I." I stepped back, hand on the door. The balance of power had shifted completely. For weeks, I had lived in the silence she left behind, learned to fill it, learned to grow from it. And in that silence, I had found something she never expected me to find: strength without her. "This isn't your home anymore," I told her. "And I'm not your safety net. I'm not a backup plan. You left, Rachel, and I'm leaving this behind." Her mouth trembled, ready to argue, to plead, to bargain. but I closed the door before the words could escape. The lock clicked, sharp and final. For the first time since the morning she said she needed space, I felt completely free. When the door closed, the house went quiet again. But it wasn't the suffocating silence of the morning she left, or the heavy quiet of those first nights alone. This was different. This was mine. I stood there for a while, listening to the sound of her footsteps fading down the hall, the suitcase wheels dragging behind her like a slow surrender. And then there was nothing. Just me, the walls, and the calm that followed a final decision. People think strength shows up in big gestures, in shouting matches, in dramatic ultimatums, in public displays of anger. But I learned it doesn't. Real strength shows up in the quiet, in the stillness after you've been tested. It's the ability to say no and mean it, even when every part of the past is begging you to give in. Rachel thought I'd chase her. She thought I'd crumble in her absence, that I'd spend my nights replaying every moment, waiting for her to come back so I could forgive her. That's why she left in the first place, because she thought she could. But I didn't. I didn't chase, I didn't beg, I didn't fall apart. I built myself back up in the silence she left behind. And when she finally came crawling back, I saw her for what she was. A person who chose everything else before me and only returned when those choices failed her. Closing that door wasn't just about her. It was about me. It was about refusing to be someone's second option. It was about refusing to trade my peace for her chaos. If there's anything I'd tell someone standing where I once stood, it's this. Don't chase the person who walks away. Don't try to convince them of your worth. Let them go. Let them see what life looks like without you, and let yourself see what life feels like without the weight of their indecision. Because the truth is, strength isn't in holding on. Strength is in letting go, standing tall, and realizing that sometimes the best answer you'll ever give is a final, unshakable no. And that's exactly what saved me.